كتاب الله لا شيء سواه يهذبنا نعمل به كتاب الله لا شيء سواه يهذبنا هذا القرآن يوحدنا لطريق الخير يوجهنا الله تعالى أنزله ورسول الله معلمنا رسول الله معلمنا.
Sometimes people come to my lectures with a little book, a little thing about like that. And they'll come to me afterwards and say, I want to ask you a question. They bring out the book and they find their favorite. They ask the question, they put the book away. I give them an answer. And they stop. No, wait a minute. When they get the book back, I say, wait. They figure they must have said it wrong. Because somebody told them, ask a Muslim this or any of these questions, he doesn't have an answer. The idea is the people who wrote that book had in mind nobody's really going to ask a Muslim that, I guess, or if he does, he'll ask somebody who can't answer it. Because he's not aware of these things or he's not thinking clearly. I can tell you some fascinating stories of the very difficulty that people have got themselves into because they've been self-confident where they had never tested what they thought they had. Ahmed Deedat was telling me some years ago in Durban there was a man, I believe he was American or British, but he was a teacher of Arabic. And he used to tease the Muslim students at the university from time to time. He'd throw out some question to them which they didn't know the answer to, and they'd run to Deedat and ask him, what do you say to this? He'd tell them something, they'd take it back to him. But Deedat kept telling them, invite him to come to me, we'll sit. Just tell him, we'll come to my home, we'll have tea, let him bring his questions to me, not to you. We'll talk about these things. The man would never come. Then one day, he was in some place where this teacher appeared. Deedat was sitting there having tea. The man had no excuse. He waved him over. He says, come here, sit down. He said, I've been wanting to talk to you. So the man sat down and he said to him, there was no sense in wasting time. He spoke to him directly. He says, I understand you're very fluent in Arabic, so I wonder why aren't you a Muslim by now? So the man said, do you have a copy of the Quran? I'll show you. So he found the ayah and he read to him the ayah that gives the complaint where Iblis complains to Allah. He says, you've caught me in the wrong. He says, you see there, I can't believe in a God who would deceive someone. He tricked Iblis. That's what Iblis says. So Deedat pointed out to him, said, in the first place, it says Iblis that's talking. He says, he complains, Allah, you tricked me. Did you believe that? I mean, the devil says that God lies, that's good enough for you? On the other hand, Deedat says to him, in the Bible, God says he's the liar. Here the devil calls God a liar, but God says he'll do the lying in the Bible. The man got very upset. He said, no, where is this? And as fast as he told him, it's a story everybody knows. Because it reports how, it says, God spoke to Moses and he said, go to Pharaoh and warn him. Tell him if he doesn't release my people, I will punish him in this way and that way and so on. Tell him that. Warn him that he has no choice but to let them go or I will punish him. Warn him, but I will harden his heart so he won't listen to your warning. That's deception. Then go ahead and warn him, but I won't let him listen to you. I'll harden his heart so he will refuse to hear the warning. He says at this point, the man got up and he turned and he walked away. And Deedat was saying, no, come back, we haven't finished. You haven't finished your tea. He said the man never even turned around. He just, straight away, never even turned around and looked at him. But I would wager you, if it was, I mean, it would seem to me to be a safe bet, because I've known it to happen, the man will use the same argument someplace else later on. Because I've seen that kind of thing happen. Now, I usually try to be, is that the advice given to people is you deal kindly with people. But the Quran makes a distinction between the ordinary man and the leaders of unbelief. You deal with them in different ways. There's a man named Ernie Hahn who heads up this Muslim Fellowship of Faith, which is meant to evangelize Muslims in Toronto. It was about 3 or 4 years ago he came to a talk that I gave, and he asked afterwards, he said, there's a serious contradiction in the Quran where it says in this ayah, the Jews bragged, we killed the Messiah. He says, the Jew wouldn't say that. They were waiting for the Messiah. They wouldn't say, we killed the Messiah. So it was pointed out to him that the Quran also says the Meccans used to come to the Muslims and say to them, you to whom the revelation came, tell us a thing. They didn't believe they really had a revelation. It was sarcasm. It was pointed out to him that the Bible says that the Jews stood there and looked at Jesus being crucified and said to him, save yourself, Messiah, in sarcasm. It's hard to imagine that there weren't at least 2 Jews that walked home that afternoon saying, hey, we killed the Messiah. Big laugh. That's what's being talked about. That's what Tafsir tells you about that ayah, which he knows very well. But he wants to insist this is an argument. So, sometime later, a couple of years later, one of his students came to a talk I gave. And he was having discussion with me afterwards, and he said, you know, there's a serious problem in the Quran where it says, and he gives me this argument. And I said, you heard that argument from Ernie Hahn 2 years ago. He told it to me. I told him this. When I gave him the reply, he put out his hand. You want to shake my hand? He says, okay, I'll give you that. That's not a very good argument, is it? He wanted to give me that. His student recognizes it's not a good argument. Another year went by. It was last fall. And the man was giving a talk near Toronto, Waterloo. And there was a question period, and when I put up my hand, I just mentioned that very thing. I said, this is your forum. You can do what you want. If you gave me 1 minute, I would prove to these people you're a liar. But you don't have to. Now I don't usually speak that way. But the man has spent 3 years lying. It's time he's named for what he is. That's why people didn't like Jesus. All the reports go because he pointed to people in the audience, said, this one has led you astray, this one is a liar, this one is a snake, and so on. So he was quite flustered, and he said, oh, go ahead. So I repeated what I just told you about his student, how he granted me the argument, so on and so forth. He didn't like that very much at all. He says, well, I still say it. A Jew would never say, we killed the Messiah. At which point, there was a man sitting here, put up his hand, and he said, well, last week, there was a rabbi in this room, and he gave a talk about Judaism and Christianity. And I asked him when the talk was over, what do you say about the Messiah? He laughed and he said, well, this is a big problem with Jews and Christians because we Jews, we killed the Messiah. So how much more proof do you want that a Jew won't say this? Or will say it, and you insist that he won't? I had a little thing I had in this case until it fell apart, the little slip of paper somebody had handed in one time that said, I suppose you think there are no contradictions in the Quran. What do you say about this? And it gave me 2 references. Surah number, ayah number, surah number, ayah number. Saying in this place it says, Allah does not guide the wrongdoers. And in this place, Allah guides whom He chooses. So do you see the contradiction? Is that a contradiction? It tells me He chooses not to guide the wrongdoers, is what it tells me. Allah guides whom He chooses. He does not guide the wrongdoers. It's not a contradiction. The one fits with the other. But the tragedy is that the person who submitted that as a question is not somebody who read 6,100 and some ayat of the Quran and found this one and made a note of it. You know very well somebody put that in his hand. Somebody said to him, you going to a talk tonight? The Muslims are giving here. There you are. You see, you don't even have to bother going. This is a mistake in the Quran. The tragedy is that people take that. They trust people like that. Who, if he really thought it was a mistake, the man who wrote that thought it was a mistake, he's mentally unfit to be a teacher in the first place. More likely he knew it wasn't a mistake but hoped it would fool somebody. In which case, he shouldn't be a teacher either. Because he's used to dealing in things that aren't true.